Hello and welcome back to the Legend of the Stars qualifying tournament number 4. So of course this is the fourth and final qualifier. These guys are trying to secure their spots in the great big Forge Alliance Forever end of year tournament, and it is going to be a doozy. So we're going to have another bunch of contenders duking it out in this, the fourth and final qualifier. And, well, they're going to try and secure those spots. Alright, let's not get into it too much. We're going to head straight over to Darkfall. We are going to get a little bit of action underway, and we're going to just follow these guys through the tournament, see who gets kicked out, and see who's going to retain their hopes of staying in the glory and, well, going for that $500 dues main prize at the end of the year. Alright, let's head straight over to Darkfall and see how this action is going to play out. Alright, we have got, well, I'm not really good with the pronunciation on this one, so we are going to with Farmsletje. He has gone UEF. He is in the right hand side of Darkfall. He is going to throw down that first land factory and get his economy underway. And his opponent for this match is Agrum, and he has elected to go Cybran. Now, interestingly enough, Agrum has actually gone for a single adjacency on that first factory just by the one mix, and then he's going to follow that up with a power generator. So there's going to be a little bit of power adjacency on that as well. If we compare that over here, we've got double adjacency, so there's going to be just that little bit of a mass bonus there in Farmsletje's favor, and that is going to be, well, a little bit handy to get those units out earlier on. Both the guys have got their first engineers out. These guys are going to go straight across and grab those hydros. Agrum maybe just being a little bit more prudent with his power build there. He's a little bit slow to get those mixes underway, of course, but the power from this hydro is going to be very badly needed for Farmsletje. He is going to be a little bit behind in power compared to what Agrum has just at the start here. We have got the first combat unit out. It is a Mantis. So interestingly, not opting for a light assault bot, he's going to go for a full-fledged T1 attack unit. He's going to pump out a Mantis. Meanwhile, Farmsletje, he's still producing, well, actually there is a Mech Marine on its way out of that factory, so he gets a couple of engineers. There are 3 engineers and then a Mech Marine, so that Mech Marine's just going to go out the front, trying to head off anything that is coming in his direction. Unfortunately, if he runs straight into that Mantis, that is going to have a pretty bad day for that Mech Marine. Not going to be able to withstand the fire from Mantis very well at all, unless there's some pretty incredible micro in store here. Now we are looking at an 1800 for Farmsletje versus 1300 for Agrum, so maybe not the most balanced. It is what you get in tournament games, though. It is, of course, randomly generated brackets. That is going to mean that we do see a couple of mismatches, but until we get further into the rounds, we start to get just the cream of the crop left. We will be seeing a few little mismatches like this. Alright, the Mech Marine does go down. There's actually fire from 2 Mantises, or 2 Manti, you might say, taking those guys out. This is looking a little bit bad for Farmsletje at the moment, even though he does have that 1800 ratings, or a massive rating advantage. He is going to be under a little bit of pressure pretty soon. So far, only having a single striker out, so that is the mainline unit for UEF. That is not going to do particularly well against a couple of Mantis rolling in. And, well, if Agrum could get enough into the back of the base here and cause enough damage to the economy, then he just might actually be able to give himself a fighting chance. That Mantis not going to do particularly well against that striker because the Mantis already reasonably damaged. He will go down pretty soon. There's another Mantis coming in. He'll have to micro that pretty carefully. The first striker there just about dead, but there is a second striker backing it up, so that is not going to do too well. And there is, of course, a scout, a snoop in there to give a little bit of radar coverage just to help out those strikers a little bit, although it looks like we might actually see a little bit of a score here for Agrum. He actually looks like he's going to take that engineer out. A little bit of a response there from Farmsletje, but a little bit too late, and the engineer does in fact go down. We can see that Farmsletje actually opting for an early bomber. Is there any air at all in play so far for Agrum? He does have an air factory up. He is getting something built in there. What does that look like? I think that is an interceptor, but that is going to be a little bit too slow out of the blocks. In fact, that bomber may even be able to block the build by bombing on top of that factory and knocking out the unit as it is produced. It looks like that's not the case. He's going after engineers. He's going to get another kill there, just the one, an anti-air turret trying to go off in emergency defense, but we could be seeing a little bit of a problem here for Agrum now that he is starting to lose his engineering power to that bomber. He does finish that interceptor. It comes out. He's going to lose another couple of engineers. He does need to get that interceptor on target. There is also a mobile anti-air. That bomber is not destined too long for this world, so he has managed to fend that off. He only lost a few engineers, but I think overall Farmsletje coming out slightly better off in that engagement. If we look at the scoreboard though, it is 19 mass per tick apiece, so pretty even on the economy front right now. The big difference here is going to be that Farmsletje has come up to the center with his ACU. He has got the extra build power hammering away on getting that expansion, and over here we see a bit of a vacant lot. There was an engineer trying to make a little bit of a play for that, but unfortunately not coming to anything due to that bomber. Alright, there was a Mantis in there just trying to guard that area, but unfortunately it gets overrun by a stack of strikers. It doesn't last long at all, and there is a little bit of an assault on this side. Unfortunately for Agrum, he probably is not aware that there is actually an ACU sitting in there, and running 4 Mantis into an ACU is never a good idea. They are going to get absolutely mown down by that ACU, leaving this army up here absolutely free to come in and attack wherever it wants. This expansion over here, extremely vulnerable at the moment. Looks like Farmsletje just continuing to push in with those strikers. He's got, how many in there? There's half a dozen strikers, another one backing them up, and there is a Snoop leading the charge to give a little bit of radar coverage, so he will be aware that there's not a lot of eco in there yet. Agrum actually, what is that, 34, 33? That is a fairly large economy. Is that reclaim? I don't think that it is. It's not bouncing around too much. So he is actually managing to stay a reasonable way ahead in that economy game. Unfortunately, these tanks are going to rip this expansion apart, and that is a big problem because there's not too many Mantis available to help out. In fact, there's probably more anti-air units right now than there are tanks, so a little bit of a problem there for Agrum. He needs a little bit more combat capability online. He does have a really nice big stack of factories planned that is going to be able to produce quite a few Mantis if he can get all of that online, but of course he does need to deal with this assault, and then by the time he deals with that assault, he's got another one coming in that he's going to have to deal with as well. So Farmsletje just managing to apply probably a little bit too much pressure right now. Nicely, a little Mantis does sneak around the back, not able to affect too much though, because there are a horde of strikers in the immediate vicinity. The ACU has come in to deal with this menace. It is going to force those units back from Agrum, but that still leaves this area very vulnerable, and that is a little bit of a problem for Agrum. He does have another 8 mass per tick tied up in this expansion here. He is still in the lead, but if he loses that expansion, that is going to cost him, and that will be the end of his eco lead. And in the air, there is not a lot of action happening here on Agrum's side of the map. In fact, he has paused his air factory because he probably just doesn't have quite enough power, although he does have a little bit more power than Farmsletje has himself. The interceptors though mean that the air control is definitely in the red camp for this. Okay, so Agrum has managed to start taking this area. He's going to grab those 4 mixes, which is going to be very handy to let him keep up a little bit. And he's actually managed to acquire a little bit of a combat force. He's going to roll on forward, and that is actually going to threaten this expansion over here. There is an engineer getting that underway. So Farmsletje is responding with a bunch of strikers, but those are split up into a couple of different groups. Those guys really need to get themselves together into one cohesive unit if they're going to be able to fight off those Manti. Alright, it looks like there might be just enough coming into place to be able to deal with that assault. There will be an easy win there for Farmsletje, but the Medusas coming in will put an end to this point defense. Well, actually, he is not even bothering to build the point defense anymore anyway. And actually Agrum managing to gather another decent assault force after he's pulled a lot of those units across to the left, or the left as Agrum is assaulting. So that is the right flank of Farmsletje, but there's still an ACU in play here. That is still a little bit of a problem. He's not going to be able to push through here. In fact, he's just running straight on in. That suggests maybe a little bit of a lack of scouting. There we go, he's spotted the menace there, and that is going to force him to turn back. Unfortunately, he has already lost a large amount of that combat capability. Alright, we can see Farmsletje actually sitting on 51 mass per tick on the scoreboard. That is starting to be a little bit of an advantage that's going to be very, very difficult for Agrum to come back from. Agrum is still pushing, but he's just not got the units in a tight enough group, and he is running them all over the ACU. There's probably enough here to be able to deal a pretty good amount of damage to that ACU, but unfortunately there is a whole stack of strikers up here that Farmsletje can call on, and that is going to absolutely eat that army for breakfast and force Agrum back. So Agrum's starting to suffer a little bit from the attacks here, or the lack of being able to push through, and every time he pushes through and doesn't make it, he leaves reclaim. In fact, these guys not doing a fantastic job of picking up the reclaim at all. There is a ton of wrecks lying around which need to be scooped up, and an engineer out front, obviously on a build command for that. Mechs unfortunately going down to fire from that army. It's not looking too unbalanced across the front here. There's about the same number of units. In fact, the ACU is not in there for Farmsletje. He's just pulling back a little bit. So the force here from Agrum with that ACU, I'd probably give a slight advantage to the blue team right now, because that is going to be a ton of HP that all of these tanks have to work through. Meanwhile, there is all of these Mantis to mop up the units that are around here for Farmsletje. Alright. How are we going? We've got transports out for Farmsletje, so he's definitely playing a little bit more of an eco game. He has got engineers up here, and up here he's going to grab all of those mexes, and this is something that Agrum is going to have to deal with. So far we've seen no play at all for these plateaus from Agrum. He doesn't have enough air control to be able to do anything with that. He does have a few interceptors here, those bombers coming in to wreak havoc on his T1 army. They should get shot down pretty fast from these few interceptors, although that is of course unless Farmsletje decides to bring his massive pack of interceptors into play. It doesn't happen. Those two bombers do go down. They manage to lay down a reasonable amount of fire on these T1 units, but that is certainly not a game ender at this point. The interceptors do go down there, and that will retain air control heavily in the favour of Farmsletje, who's using it to grab all of these expansions and doing a fantastic job of eco, sitting on 69 it looks like mass per tick to the 47 of Agrum. Agrum still managing to keep up pretty well despite a pretty severe rating disadvantage. Unfortunately, he hasn't spotted this. Does he have any radar up? Yes, he does, so he will be aware of those guys on the radar. He actually hasn't looked to react to them at all yet, and that is going to be a little bit of a problem, because that exposes the eco in the back here, and potentially getting all the way up into right into the base, into the production facilities as well. But maybe even more importantly, it pulls units away from the front line from Agrum's army. That is going to open up even more gaps. We can see a little bit of a transport war going on here. We have got another unit of build capacity rolling on in from Farmsletje, but there is a bunch of combat units rolling in here, and those guys are going to start laying down some hurt on these factories and maybe even be able to deny it, which would be a little bit of a nice move from Agrum if he could get that sorted. He does have more engineers up here to worry about, though. He will have to get that taken care of, and he is losing reclaim to it as well. He is finally responding to this army here, but it has pulled a lot of units away from his front line. It's going to take some time to bring those guys back up to the front, where it looks like Farmsletje is actually getting ready to move. He's bringing all of his strikers in. They are going to fairly soon be rolling in upon here. Now, what are we going for here? We are on an upgrade, and it looks like he has gone for the gun. So he is going to get the gun, but meanwhile there is actually a T2 factory back in the here. Well, actually there's a couple of support factories. There is one HQ and, wow, 4 support factories. So that is where the extra eco from Farmsletje is being pumped. That is a little bit of a problem, and unfortunately actually for Agrum, he's got his units on assist for that ACU, which means they've formed themselves up in a absolutely terrible formation around the ACU, which would make them very easy to pick off by an assaulting force. We are seeing a counter gun upgrade there, I suggest. There we go. And there are also a few pillars in the mix. Have we got a corresponding T2 upgrade in here from Agrum? Oh, I don't know that we do. that is maybe a little bit of a problem. Once those pillars start hitting the field in numbers, they are just going to be an absolute massive issue. Hang on. What? Did that say nano repair? It sure did. Gun and nano repair. Look at that. Farmsletje going all out for ACU upgrades. He is going to just start raining death down upon this army, although he does have to make sure he doesn't get caught out in a big pile of mantis and get trapped and lose his pathfinding. It looks like the armies are going to collide, and with the extra pillars and the extra dense force there from the red team, I suspect that is going to go heavily in favor of Farmsletje, and that is going to pretty much end Agrum's hopes of staying in the top bracket. That is going to push him back down into the bottom of the tournament, because he's now going to get surrounded, and it was a very valiant play. He just didn't have the numbers, he didn't have the tech, and now even if he was to survive, he has left an absolute ton of reclaim out here, which is going to boost Farmsletje even more. But he is vaporizing pretty quickly down to 2,600, 2,500, I can't even count that fast, and down he goes. So that keeps Farmsletje through into the next round, while Agrum is going to drop down into the bottom bracket. Alright, a nice little opening and play there on Darkfall to get us underway. Alright, let's go and have a look at which other games we have got lined up and see what else